Tanya Degurechaff was once a salaryman with a useless job until one day he found himself reincarnated into another world as a kind, sweet, lovable girl. Well, maybe in someone else's eyes she may be sweet, but in reality, she's a demon menace in a tiny body. And well, she sure didn't make their lives any better. Tanya rised up the ranks, even earning herself the nickname of the devil. If there were any crimes when it comes to battling, trust me when I say, this little menace brat probably did all of them. It starts with buildings being blown away and a fight begins. The country going by the name of Empire attempts to charge at the opposing team, however they refuse to back down after discovering some oil in another country, which you can probably guess which team is the other side. A lot of the soldiers have started role-playing Keller. That means they've gone blind and some have lost their legs. Then, we see a guy who is about to be eaten, but a girl named Victoria saves him in time. Seeing that, the enemy starts to shoot at them, but Victoria's partners are saving her. But she takes the almost defeated guy back and tells the other soldiers that the commander has ordered them to keep fighting and finish off all the soldiers from the opposing team. Suddenly, a missile comes and almost hits Victoria, but she manages to save herself, yet falls back because of the impact. However, Tanya, the menace, has come to save the day. She assures Empire's soldiers that they should have some faith in God and asks God for powers. Then, she literally blows the opponents away with just one shot. Seeing that, Victoria's jaw drops. Tanya walks up to her and tells her to complete her duty as a soldier. As Victoria likes to phrase it, Tanya is way more dangerous than a bullet. Tanya is the commander of Platoon Kingdom, and speaking on the Empire, it's a very strong country as well as the neighboring countries of it. Being unfair, everyone attacks the Empire for this reason. The Empire had to use Plan 315. Later, Lieutenant Erich tells General Kurt that the forces from northern areas are delayed, which hints towards that even Plan 315 failed like the way your dad failed in playing a role in your life. On the other hand, Tanya tells Victoria to shoot the enemies and she takes them down successfully. However, this is unfortunately where Tanya, the menace energy, all started. There are two individual soldiers, Corporal Harold von Vist and Corporal Krust von Walhorf. The mission is to delay the Republicans, nothing else. However, Krust and Harold did their own thing, which was taking out the artillery. Despite Tanya telling them not to, Victoria glances toward the lieutenant, only to feel complete fear. Later at night, Tanya appoints Krust and Harold. So, long story short, Tanya fires them both. Kinda humiliating that 6 feet tall guys got fired by a 4 feet girl. They both protest against her decision, which at first makes her furious, but she decides to take it into consideration. Yet, she plans to punish them. But let's just say punishing isn't even the word for what they are about to experience. The next morning, Island tells Victoria that Harold and Krust have been transferred to the rear, which makes her happy because the rear area is safer. But let's not forget this is Tanya we're talking about. Later, during the war, Victoria gets tired and falls to the ground, and Tanya sure does remind Victoria of her mommy issues and tells her that they don't have space for useless people, so she better continue fighting. An emergency meeting is called, where it's informed that enemy observer hunters are here, but she can't fight them with lazy people like Victoria. But Victoria insists that she wants to go. Later, some soldiers are being attacked, waiting for reinforcements. On the other hand, Augustin, who is from the opponent team, orders his team to attack the soldiers, and that's when Tanya loses contact with the observers too. So, Tanya goes on to attack the platoons and the enemies brace themselves. But, being flashy, Tanya dodges the attacks and wipes out all the enemies except Augustin and 2 of his partners. So, they begin chasing, but at one point, their limit crosses and Tanya reaches way beyond their limits. Augustin shoots at her but realizes that what he's seeing is an illusion and he's been scammed. Then, Tanya uses her extremely powerful spell and collects all the power in her gun. She shoots at them, and well, all of them get fried like KFC chicken and the war ends. Later, in the Ministry of Defense headquarters, the lieutenant discusses Tanya destroying the entire 106th company. Erich says that he has met Tanya and she looks like a little girl. But by any means that little girl seems like a complete demon. Meanwhile, Victoria is informed that Harold and Krust have been wiped out. She rushes to tell Tanya about it, but before she even finishes speaking, Tanya already seems to know about it. Victoria thinking, "Lieutenant, did you send their asses to a trip to the afterlife on purpose?" With a menacing grin, Tanya smiles with a revenge look in her face. Time for a little backstory on how Tanya got teleported into another world in the first place. Tanya in her previous life was a successful businessman. And yeah, sort of emotionally unavailable and always angry and strict too. But anyways, one day old Tanya, who is a man, fires an employee for being a jackass worker. The employee begs to not fire him because he has his mistake. I mean, his daughter, who he has to take care of and pay her expenses. As expected, old Tanya did not give a damn. So, being a Gen Z type of serial killer but in a subtle way, that employee pushes him on the railway tracks. And of course it's the menacely train con, but however, he doesn't die instantly. Instead, dude gets surrounded by weird people, being stuck in time. They all talk to him about having faith in God, and of course, as sadistic as this dude is, he didn't believe in God. Before he gets hit by the train, he is told that he will be reincarnated. But if he dies in his second lifetime, he will be dead and won't get reincarnated again. With that said, he gets hit by the train and yeah, pretty much you know the rest. Now, Tanya opens her eyes in the arms of a nun feeding her some baby food. Tanya looks around and sees that she's been reincarnated into a little girl. Finally, the part you losers can relate to, Tanya gets abandoned by her parents because maybe they were poor or something like that and probably didn't use protective measures. So, Tanya ended up in the church along with other orphans, and in this world, everything is very clear as to who is rich and poor. Where Tanya got reincarnated is similar to Germany in the 1940s. That being said, Tanya notices how this world didn't have technological advancements, but this world has magic and American love of weapons. But what the orphanage discovered was Tanya had immense magical powers, and in this world she is classified as a mage and not some 9-to-5 working manager only to get a minimum wage. Tanya knows that the only way to survive in this world is to join the army and keep herself alive. So, she doesn't just make a mage, but also joins the training. After a while, she becomes a trainer in less than a year, and as soon as the new trainees look at her, they think that it's some sort of a joke to be trained by a lowly, especially a midget. Tanya seriously says to them to not drive her to despair, to which one of the trainees mock her and says that it's a good attempt in scaring them. Well, dude surely didn't know what was about to come for him. Tanya attacks him so wildly, he gets his ass slammed on a wall, shocking everyone else. The man tries to resist her attacks and calls Tanya a brat. But soon enough he's on the ground too. Before she could actually bring in some damage to the trainee, she gets stopped. Later, the soldier begins discussing a plan and debating who to send over to the north where the enemies are at. And as you can probably who got sent to north, Tanya gets deployed to the north to fight the enemies. But there was not much of a danger, well unless you count Tanya as the danger. Well, some intruders actually made their way into attacking, and Tanya never thought that she would face anything while training. So, she hates being X, which is the name she gave the god that sent her to that world. Anyhow, they all attack the people on the ground while some enemies are in the air, approaching Tanya. Though, Tanya doesn't know that because of the static noise. Then, soon enough she realizes she is being attacked, but the enemy mage misses his shot. He's surprised to see how small and petite Tanya is. Tanya tries fleeing, but she is told to distract the enemies for 600 seconds. Tanya, realizing how BS the army can be, wondering how the frick is somehow supposed to last 600 seconds when most of her useless teammates can't even last 6 seconds. But as they approach her, she laughs and says that she's gonna be a hero all by herself, maybe a good day to die. One by one, the soldiers try to attack her, but Tanya dodges the attacks and attacks them back. They try surrounding her, but Tanya just has 120 more seconds to fight them. But that's when she runs out of ammo and she puts her hands into action and destroys all the enemies, and 3 of them flee. Before she falls to the ground, she has a smile on her face, knowing that she was successful in taking them down. Anyhow, Tanya survives and opens her eyes in a hospital bed. She gets awarded with Silver Wings Assault Badge, which gets kept on her pillow beside her. Everyone claps for her and she smiles. On the other hand, a scientist reads the news of Tanya getting Silver Wings Assault Badge at the age of just 9. He thinks while he puts in some effort in a red glowing stone, that Tanya's magical capacity and output are both quite incredible. Well, he does look as evil as Tanya is, so probably they might make a good duo, even though the age difference is crazy. Tanya Degurechaff receives the orders she had hoped for, so it seems initially. She is transferred to the instructor's unit, precisely the position she desired. Despite her excitement, Tanya remains cautious not to appear overly eager, accepting the transfer with measured enthusiasm. Her excitement is over the roof very clearly when she learns that part of her new role involves testing new magic crystals. Her initial attempt at this task ends disastrously with something like explosive diarrhea. Anyhow, the next test involves a new 4-core magical crystal. As Tanya climbs higher into the sky, the crystal's instability becomes evident. Getting kinda scared, such a feminine trait. She rushes back to the ground, requesting to stop the test due to safety concerns. The scientist in charge of the project, however, is totally offended, as if she surprised him with a pregnancy because he thought she was disrespecting him for his invention, and an argument takes place like an old couple fighting. The crystal's instability reaches a critical point, forcing Tanya to shut it down. The support system subsequently explodes, which could have made Tanya into another fried chicken, and she wouldn't have the ability to reincarnate again. Despite this close call, the scientist continues to argue with her upon landing. But Tanya manages to extricate herself from the heated exchange by checking into the infirmary. Right before she sleeps, here comes Being X in the form of a toy as the time pauses around her. Being X says that she hasn't developed the tiniest bit of a faith and tells her to be appreciative of him because he literally gave her another chance at life and stop being so arrogant. Before he leaves, he gives Tanya a blessing. While recovering, Tanya submits a request for transfer to the front lines, believing it to be a safer option than continuing to test the volatile magical crystals. Her feedback leads to headquarters, which cancels further funding for the project. Tanya's lack of appreciation for Being X's so-called blessing is apparent as she accuses Being X of cheating and correctly identifies the manipulations that put her in such situations. But still, Being X leaves a hint for her which she reads as she wakes up, realizing whatever happened was actually a dream. The next day, the crazy scientist sets Tanya up for testing out his magic crystal again, and soon enough Tanya realizes that she's cooked. There's no other way out for her, so she blames Being X, and just before she explodes, Being X appears and tells Tanya that he will make Tanya beg until she has faith in her completely. Sounds kinky, after all, God is also a man in this world. As she is about to fall down, Tanya praises the god and the miracle happens. The magic crystal works and the experiment is successful. During a combat mission, Victoria struggles to interact appropriately with her commanding officer, Tanya, as usual. Not that we can blame her, considering her commander is a menace to society. Back at headquarters, Erich's distrust of Tanya is clear, which raises eyebrows among his peers. His continuous expressions of concern about their top ace prompt Hans von Zedor, the army chief of staff, to confront him directly. Then, Zedor informs Rurujan that they have already decided on Tanya's next assignment, saying that Rurujan's worries are both noted and dismissed. Meanwhile, Victoria is both shocked and worried when Tanya gives her a promotion to the officer track. Tanya's promotion to first lieutenant and transfer to headquarters comes with her expectation of a quieter life, one with warm food and fewer life-threatening situations. That won't happen, weebs. We gotta continue our story somehow. However, back at HQ, Zedor discovers a folder labeled Deus Low Vault on his desk. As he looks inside, he finds Tanya's picture, which indicates her involvement in a new rapid response unit designed for frontline combat. Tanya's ongoing battle with Being X, the mysterious entity responsible for her reincarnation into this war-torn world. The mysterious entity being God, which Tanya won't have faith in until she's yeeted again. Tanya's desire to escape the direct influence of Being X makes many of her decisions. Her sharp intelligence and strategic mind constantly seek ways to maneuver around the divine interventions that complicate her life. Or she could just maybe accept the fact. But again, she's a woman now, so of course she needs multiple explanations to fit in that brain. Her frustration with Being X's manipulations is clear, and she remains super eager to chart her own course, even if it means facing the dangers of the front lines. At headquarters, the tension surrounding Tanya's rapid rise through the ranks is clear. Rurujan's vocal distrust contrasts with the more strategic considerations of his superiors. The decision to place Tanya in a rapid response unit suggests that her superiors both recognize her exceptional abilities and understand the need to deploy her where she can be most effective, despite the potential risks. Tanya's strategic mind is already contemplating her next moves. Her transfer to the front lines, while seemingly kinda more dangerous than being struck by a train, shows a big risk to escape the unpredictable hazards of magical crystal testing. And the direct influence of Being X, the promotion of Victoria, hints at Tanya's recognition of loyalty and competence among her subordinates, further making her reputation stronger as a formidable and strategic leader. Now, with our blonde maniacal midget waking up from her restful sleep, probably dreaming about slaughtering kittens, Tanya then turns on the radio to listen to the updates about the military ongoings of the war as she gets ready for another day at the military academy. Once she is ready, she collects her gun and heads out. People are going about their day in the city as Tanya walks to the academy. She still remembers the scent of blood and gunpowder from when she was on the front lines, but has actually started to enjoy her studies and campus life. She thinks to herself how similar the military academy is to a normal university, minus the shooting and beheading parts. During class, an absolute buttmunch is asked about a certain strategy and he is unable to answer. When the teacher asks Tanya, she gracefully responds with an answer that follows the military law, and the teacher is really impressed. As the classroom clears out, Commander Ugra asks her why she carries her gun at all times, and she makes an excuse about how she could need to be on duty at any time. The true reason was in case she came face to face against Being X at random. Later at the library, the wee midget crackhead is trying to reach a book on a high shelf and failing miserably at it. That is when a man enters and takes the book off the shelf for her, commending her for being so studious and smart. When Tanya sees the rank on his uniform, she gets her undies in a twist and salutes the general standing before her. The man introduces himself as General Zedor, someone who was currently in charge of military strategy. Tanya finds this to be the opportunity of a lifetime because she can finally find a way into a cushy job away from the front lines. Zedor asks to speak with her and she eagerly agrees to it. Once at his office, Zedor asks Tanya to sit down and asks about her opinion on the war. Tanya responds that the question is too broad. In her mind, she's doing mental gymnastics trying to give the best answers so the general would not be disappointed. Zedor clarifies that he wants to know about the future of the war. Like a pain-in-the-butt teacher's pet, Tanya starts about how she thinks the war would soon develop into a world war. The military was powerful enough to defeat the Republic and that would lead to them getting control over the country, but other alliances and groups would be hesitant and a war for power would break out globally. This impresses Zedor, who asks her how she would manage if that happened. Tanya is still in her head trying her best not to make a single mistake. She talks about forming alliances early on and regulating resources so that the country would have a strong place when the war got really bad. Zedor almost traps her by asking why winning was not an objective and Tanya goes through an oh crap moment. She covers up her sloppy mistake by going into detail how the alliances would help them and how battling with mages on the front lines would be really helpful. Regarding the few number of mages present, they could spread them out and make the best use of their abilities and win the war. Tanya impresses even herself with how much BS she can pull out of her ass. Zedor seems content with all of this and asks Tanya to submit a formal proposal to implement her strategy. She leaves the office and the general is left concerned over how smart Tanya truly is. The proposal reaches Strategic HQ and Erich is really pissed off at the midget Loli's plan for the mage battalion. He recognizes the handwriting and the pattern and it soon hits him what was at stake. Meanwhile, Tanya is having coffee in a small cafe when she is surprised by Ugur, who sits down to have a chat with her. He asks her why she chose the military when she could have done anything. This leads to Tanya explaining her mommy issues sob story after her dad died, so military was all that she could do. Ugur says that he has a newborn daughter and Tanya should drop out of the military because he could see the cruelty in sending flat-chested lolis to battle. Tanya declines and invites Ugur for lunch, trying to manipulate him, but he declines. The news of the mage battalion reaches the West HQ where Erich is shocked at what is going on. Things are moving really fast and the person he had chosen for the mission had apparently grown too much at the academy. Zedor invites Tanya to dinner and makes her one of the 12 knights. She is honored and presented with a job opportunity to pick whatever she wanted to do after graduation. She soon realizes it's a trap and she has to lead the mage battalion. But for this one she kinda dug her own grave by being a smartass. In her office, she is bombarded with stacks of papers and just when she is wondering how to go through them all, Sir enters and Tanya is shocked at how all her plans were coming to bite her from behind. Victoria is making an honest effort for a boss who, we should simply say, isn't paying special attention to her well-being. Tanya is frustrated that Victoria shows up because it implies the mound of paperwork among her and making the battalion ready is less of a snag. Sadly, it gets complicated. Victoria has mentioned extra assistance, so it is much more straightforward to traverse the resumes. Not one to surrender easily, Tanya devises a magical test to screen out mages, and they figure out to eliminate enough to the formation of a battalion in peril. General Hans von Zedor restlessly orders her to figure out how to accumulate more applicants. He tells her she can utilize extraordinarily tough techniques. Victoria is extremely nervous at Tanya's smile. The trainees head out into the wild to start the training. As they are attempting to rest, I literally cannot make this up, Tanya, being the menace she is, stirs them with an explosion and advises them to expect approaching live mounted guns to shoot for a day and a half. Victoria, expecting simply such a turn of events, is now digging her foxhole when the shells begin to fall. Tanya will probably mistreat the enlisted people until they quit. Indeed, even following a day and a half of relentless shelling, not a single one of them surrender. So Tanya basically says, it's time for round 2 without utilizing magic. They have 48 hours to get to the impossibly far off next position despite all deterrents. They walk as the night progresses, now and again midsection somewhere down in snow, until one of them shouts that Tanya is a you-know-what. His shout causes an avalanche. One of the fighters stalls such a lot of snow out in his throat that he can't inhale, and appears dead. At this point, Tanya literally kicks him hard enough in the back to remove the snow. The soldiers hail her powers as extraordinary. Well, if he wasn't dead from the snow, he going to be gone from his back problems. The trial she had planned to break their spirits welded them significantly more intently together. They become the 203rd Air Mage Battalion. Tanya had planned to break every one of them to delay the arrangement of the battalion. All things considered, she unintentionally made a ruthlessly productive battling force. While looking for her battalion's requests, Erich von Rurugen orders her to meet with him. He explains that she and her soldiers have been requested toward the southeastern front lines. Before leaving the gathering, Erich proposes she learn Dacian, the language of the people of the Dukedom of Dacia. At the point when they show up in the theater, Tanya can't trust the reports. Dacia has attacked the kingdom, and they are communicating their orders to their soldiers over a decoded channel. Far more detestable, they are communicating that they have no air cover. She can hardly imagine how incompetent the Dacian armed forces is so incompetent. She and her battalion connect with the enemy of 60,000 troops. The attack must be called a slaughter. The Dacian armed force has no understanding of air strategies. They battle as though they are facing ground-based troops, and they die in masses. Tanya can hardly imagine how their lead power is so bumbling. They follow radio transmissions to the Dacian base, and Tanya allows them an opportunity to give up. All things being equal, they attack, and even Victoria says that they're burning through their time attempting to communicate. They eliminate each of the troopers except the leader. Subsequent to stripping the spot and booby capturing no less than one dead body, they go ahead to the Dacian capital. Finding a gigantic weapons production line in the city, Tanya utilizes her little girl voice to declare their attack and allow the enemies an opportunity to empty, all to satisfy a worldwide show. Then ruin the production line and the encompassing structures. Tanya portrays the optional explosions as firecrackers praising their attack. She commands her battalion to get back to their kingdom. Indeed, even Victoria can't really accept how desolate the invaders were. Tanya and her battalion face a great deal of difficulties, yet they figure out how to make something happen and make areas of strength for a power. Tanya's brutal preparation techniques unite the fighters, and they become the 203rd Air Mage Battalion. They then, at that point, face the Dacian armed force, which ends up being totally not ready for their assault. In spite of the multitude of impediments, Tanya and her group prove to be the best, showing exactly the way that strong and brilliant they are. Tanya's finesse and vital brain are on full presentation. She figures out how to transform tough spots into potential open doors, in any event, when things don't go according to plan. Her capacity to adjust and conquer difficulties makes her such an imposing pioneer. Also, with her dependable companion Victoria close by, there's no test too huge for Tanya and her battalion. Whether it's managing heaps of paperwork, harsh training, or an inadequately prepared enemy, Tanya demonstrates that she is generally prepared to confront whatever comes her direction. Tanya's sharp plans and intense training strategies make her battalion solid. They contend energetically and win against the enemy. Tanya and Victoria function admirably together. Tanya's group turns into the 203rd Air Mage Battalion, an incredible battling force. Tanya lets Victoria know that she thinks other world powers are helping their enemies. The commanders are cheerful about their triumph against the Dukedom of Dacia, yet they stress since they are as yet battling on two fronts. Kurt von Rudersdorf needs to attack the Entente Alliance, yet they have a logistics issue. Hans von Zetzer says they can't uphold any huge troop developments rapidly. Rudersdorf recommends utilizing the 203rd Battalion, Tanya's mages. From their base in the southeast, Tanya's soldiers are requested to move north for the general's arrangements. Subsequent to preparing the soldiers, Tanya tells Victoria her doubt that other world powers are helping the kingdom's enemies. She doesn't let Victoria know that she believes Being X is behind a large number of the issues. On the northern front, the mages are under mighty attack while protecting their base. The circumstance deteriorates as enemy forces and bomber planes show up. The kingdom's misfortunes develop, and the excess mages are nearly annihilated when they get the request to withdraw. Their forces, called Pixie, have shown up. After rapidly taking a look at the enemies, Tanya conveys her powers. To give her mages more motivation, Tanya tells the local commanders not to send off their interceptors. She and her soldiers will deal with the bomber planes. It was a smart move in light of the fact that the enemy is more prepared and equipped than they expected. As Tanya's mages work harder, the bombers and their mage escorts show up. Tanya tells her battalion she dropped the order for interceptors, and that the group who plays out the most exceedingly terrible will pay for victory celebrations. Tanya orders Victoria to take her company and battle the escort while Tanya takes on the bomber planes alone. The bomber plane pilots can't accept a single mage is going after them, then they can't really accept that she arrives at their height and speed prior to dropping a grenade leading the pack plane's cockpit. As the bombers attempt to withdraw, Tanya begins her prayers of power and releases her attack. She destroys the majority of the planes in her most initial strike. The rest retreated. As her soldiers center around the excess mages, Tanya follows one plane to its accident site to try to question the group. She's disheartened to track down everybody dead. Time freezes, and she hears Being X's voice coming from the dead pilot. She shoots her rifle, however he continues talking, saying the world will betray her for her wrongdoings. After he insults her once more, Tanya continues to fire until time starts again. However, she doesn't lose control of herself. Realizing the other world powers are watching, she searches for, and finds, an Alliance Empire listening post. she destroys it totally. Afterward, General Rudersdorf and Colonel Erich von Rurugen come to praise her and give her the next task. Recalling being X's insult, she vows to show every one of their enemies a lesson. Entente soldier Anson Su says goodbye to his wife and daughter Mary as they leave the city for safety in an emotional farewell, just like your dad left to get milk. Honestly, who can blame him? Man doesn't want his family in the city that Tanya's about to blow up. As his family's ship leaves, he sits there all emotional when his subordinate gives him a present Mary left for him. It's a gun with his initials. How cute and slightly unhinged. Back at the Empire, Tanya is spitting war strategies left and right. She wants to play the long game by slowly approaching the enemy. But the old goose, Grandpa Vibes commander, wants her to adopt a basic ass guaranteed to fail strategy of going full offensive. However, our homegirl doesn't back down from giving him a piece of her mind. Good for her, we stand an assertive queen. Later, she sips tea with commanders Kurt and Erich while discussing strategy. She lets them know that going on a full offensive would be suicidal at best. She plans a surprise attack at the rear using the full offensive as a distraction. Yes, our Devil of the Rhine is smart, blonde and viscous, the perfect combination. And thus begins the Battle of Fjord. The fjords of Entente Alliance are surrounded by mountains, so people think no one can penetrate. Little do they know Miss Degurechaff is gonna fly right in. Sue is low-key sweating but tries to play it cool. Meanwhile, Tanya with her battalion of mages goes all in for the surprise attack, just like you were a surprise to your dad. Jumping from a plane with her troops, Tanya heads right into enemy territory, leaving Victoria in charge in case things go sideways. As expected, Miss Ma'am did not come to play. She begins the attack with a bang. There is fire and blasts everywhere. The Ententes are just as surprised as everyone else. Tanya rocked and Anson shocked. For defense, the Entente Alliance dispatches a company of mages. The mages try to get the best of Tanya and her troops. Needless to say, they fail miserably. Tanya with her battalion faces the sorry Entente company head-on. Back at the Empire, Erich and Kurt question whether Blondie will be able to pull this off. The audacity to question our Divi of the Rhinal. Meanwhile, at the fjords, the battle is more loud and viscous than the one you have with your toilet after tacos. Blondie is attacking the enemy cannons to weaken the enemies, but the Entente Alliance is also quick to defend. Vicious battles later, Tanya and her troops come out of the battle with a major W. They literally ate and left no crumbs. Just as she's about to leave, Anson comes face to face with her and recognizes her from their past encounter. Madly, he loses his absolute mess and goes off at the Empire battalion with his gun. Naturally, Tanya defends every attack effortlessly. She's the Devil of Rhine for a reason after all. Although Entente reinforcements arrive at the scene, the Empire ships beat them to the punch. They annihilate the living mess out of the enemy reinforcements, securing the Empire's victory. Mission successful. Tanya and her platoon retreat. Anson, on the other hand, is left to pick up the pieces of his destroyed troops. Everywhere he looks, he sees the hell that Tanya has casually unleashed on them. Engulfed by emotion as he looks down at his gun, refusing to give up. Alone, he shoots across the sky towards Tanya, gun in hand. Tanya and Anson have a one-on-one intense battle, both calling out to God for help. Alas, Anson crumbles like stale bread at Tanya's knife. He bleeds before falling into the ocean below. Tanya still doesn't recognize him but takes his gun for herself as a Christmas present. The Empire soldiers take over the fjords, celebrating their win over the Entente Alliance. With pride, Tanya looks at the mess she left behind from the ship, remorseless and satisfied. Back at the Entente headquarters, officials are still in denial, refusing to take the L. Meanwhile, the Empire now has control of all resources and rail paths. They plan to use these new gains to end the battle once and for all. Whatever happens next, one thing's for sure right now: this win is crucial to the Empire. On the other hand, Anson's wife and daughter hear about his defeat against the Empire on the radio. The Empire's victory is also proving to be a sign of their dominance over all others. It starts with our favorite sadistic midget up in the air commanding her battalion as she comments on the war. Being on the front lines is an extremely hectic job, but Tanya seems to be handling it really well. There is a lot of bloodshed and the war is heated. Tanya is commanding her soldiers and shouting out instructions as she secretly gets horned up by all the strategies that she's implementing. Meanwhile, the aerial combat unit is busy taking down the enemies, and some of the people on the battalion are getting cocky about their abilities and how well they are taking down the other side. It was the 8th day of the war and everything was going in their favor. A commander lets a troop know not to toot his horn too much because the enemy bullets would explode and shatter and it would be easy to get caught in the crossfire. Sir is busy flying around being a useless twit when the enemy mages approach. Tanya yells out an order for all the battalion to handle the mages in combat and take them out however they place. Drones are flying everywhere and a heated battle is taking place. After the battle ends, one of the troops is eating with his bandaged hand and drops his spoon just as Commander Weiss comes down to sit next to him. They gossip a bit about their leader and how the war was going on. They turn to Sir and tell her that she was only the commander because she flew close to Tanya. She looks up from her livestock feed of a soup and asks if anyone would like to take her position. Being all talk and nothing else, the men mention how that would be impossible due to how things were with Tanya. Just as they're having their productive conversation, a man frantically runs in asking if Commander Tanya was there. Weiss stands up and introduces himself as the second in command and asks if he can take a message for what had happened. The man hands him a piece of paper which bore terrible news. Apparently, a rear part of the town had been taken over. The partisans had started a rebellion in Aran City which formerly used to be Republican territory. Tanya comments on how they had failed to completely kill the rebellion. Aran City is in shambles with the battalion's supplies cut off. They would have to fight without food or shells. The people there of the rebellion were brutally murdering the opposition and blowing up the bridge. To add gasoline to the fire, the enemy mages had hooked up with the rebellion and created a horrendous murder thing. They were slaughtering the army. This is bad news for Tanya's battalion, which she already hated commanding because it took away from her dreams of living a cushy life strategizing. Captain of the 2nd Mage Squadron, Severin Bayantot guns down some of Tanya's military deploys. He then commands to secure the defensive areas and prepare for a very long battle. They were to delay the war for as long as possible and push against the military. Meanwhile, Tanya is told to rejoice by her commander back at the office because she was being handed a special mission from the theater command. It was the 203 responsibility to demolish the opposing mage armies that were overpowering them. The order was to deal with the mages who had teamed up with the Aran militia, and the entire city was now being treated as if it was Republican territory. Tanya starts to strategize in her mind and mentions how combat in a city would be very hard. The commander mentions how that was not going to be an issue since they already had a tactic in mind. The plan was to send out an evacuation order by the military for all of the Aran area, and anyone who did not listen to it and stayed in the city would be treated like a Republican enemy. The army then had permission to fight with them and eliminate them. This shocks Tanya, who only wanted to take care of the mages who had teamed up. She even voices her concern and displays disdain at how dangerous something like this was. The commander tells her that there would be an army barrage waiting to wipe out any remaining people of the rebellion who remained. It was all a bloody massacre in Tanya's eyes. She talks about what the army's ultimate goal with this was. She then starts thinking out loud and starts getting sadistic with what it meant for her command. Her commander stops her before she can continue thinking aloud. She apologizes for being so informal in front of a higher-ranking officer. The commander shares her sympathy and mentions how this was not how soldiers are supposed to live, but orders were orders. It seems like everything is set and now the only thing left to do is for the midget to get horned up about murder. Tanya explains the orders to her troops about how they were going to take care of the mages along with the Republican enemies. The evacuation note was sent out and the people of Aran were not happy about it. Tanya personally had some issues with the plans because Aran was a beautiful place. The troops are then informed about how they were supposed to spare the non-combatants and even the enemy mages if they listened to Tanya's demands and surrendered on her terms. However, people have their qualms about the plans, but nobody dares to speak up to Tanya. As the troops are getting ready for heading into battle, there is talking among them about how inhumane the entire thing was. There was no way to tell apart civilians and Republican enemies, so they would essentially be using them as human shields for their advantage. The people would be killed like pawns in a deadly game. A commander speaks up and yells at people talking about these matters. Orders were orders according to him, and there was no time to second guess themselves. News of the Imperial Army's response to the rebellion and alliance of mages and rebels reaches Severin Bayantot. He did not expect the military to respond so quickly to their assault and orders his troops and mages to proceed with the plan as they had already discussed. This meant that the approaching unit of Tanya's battalion would be sniped down from hiding while they thought that the people had evacuated. As the battalion reached the city of Aran, some army soldiers were being tied up and beaten by the rebels and held against their will as hostages. The seemingly quiet atmosphere is suddenly disturbed when one of Tanya's troops is shot down from hiding. Tanya quickly orders them to spread out and they get ready to face the army of mages against them led by Bayantot. Soon, the battalion starts to overpower the rebels and the mages as they spread out and start taking them down one by one. Since destroying city property was no longer an issue, there is a lot of destruction going on as Tanya aims to suppress the uprising and take back the city of Aran. Bayantot is very aggressive with his mages and manages to get a good hit in. Sir informs the battalion about the opponent's location, and that helps a lot in taking care of them. After some more fighting has gone down, Weiss asks Grants if he can take a stimulant since he was not feeling too good. Grants agrees and is heading over to him when he stops in shock. This was because Weiss had been shot and wounded. They quickly drop to the ground so Grants could administer a coagulant to Weiss. Tanya shows up not long after and tells Weiss that he should fall back since it would be better for the wounded to leave rather than stay and slow down the fight. Weiss shamefully agrees and a new chain of command is quickly set up on the spot. Weiss then retreats as Tanya's forces keep pushing towards the enemy mages. The Devil Rein's orders were to keep pushing forward since the only goal of the mages was to delay the war, so they did not give them any chance to catch their breath. Once Severin learns that the army was not holding back, his cheeks get clapped and he orders his mage army to retreat, and they all go into hiding in a building. The troops are about to charge when Tanya stops them and says that if they had retreated, they could focus on suppressing the rebellion. The entire city should not have to be destroyed meaninglessly in a battle when the enemy had already retreated. She then grabs a megaphone and issues out commands to all of the people still in Erin. She lets them know that they needed to surrender if they wanted to not get treated like Republican enemies. She then orders them to release all of the troops that had been captured since they were people of Erin, and this angers the people of the rebellion greatly. Just then, one of the captured and tied up militiamen tries to run away, and as soon as he is out in the open, he gets shot down. Tanya is done with their BS and considers that as a signal that the civilians were now Republican enemies. She had done her part by letting them know on the megaphone, and now they would have to face the consequences of disobeying the military. She orders the troops to go ahead and basically slaughter everyone in sight. She gives the green light to the barrage that was on standby, and even though Grants is horrified by the order, the killing begins. The tanks take down the buildings, and the beautiful city of Erin is now on fire and everything is burning. Women, children, and old people are being caught in the crossfire of the brutal reality of war. Meanwhile, Tanya the maniacal midget is having the time of her life, shooting and blasting away at everyone who had disobeyed her. Even Severin Bayantad is horrified by what the opposition was doing, and he orders them to fall back and help the people of the rebellion, but it is too late by that point. The barrage is in full force and people are getting slaughtered left and right. Grants is in total shock as he carries a wounded hostage to the makeshift recovery area they had set up in Erin. They notice a bunch of common people in the distance walking away trying to evacuate, and Tanya receives an order to eradicate them. That is when Grants reaches his breaking point and flies off to where Tanya is standing. He expresses his horror and how they should let the people simply go because they were unarmed and innocent, and Tanya warns him about disobeying direct orders from superiors. Grants cannot take it anymore and is slowly driving himself mad as he tries to reason with Tanya, who gives him the ass whooping of a lifetime. She then yells at him to pick up his gun and follow orders because he was being disobedient and disgraceful. As tears flow down his face, he looks at the innocent people before him before losing it and starts shooting at them, yelling out in horror over the sins he was committing. Back at headquarters, Eric comes over to Zetter because he had something to discuss. He presents him with a paper which included ways of legalizing combat in cities that included bombardment of the areas. He then confirms that the paper was written by Tanya. He is shocked, but Zetter commends Tanya for being a very skilled soldier. He then announces that he had an important mission for Tanya to end the war with the Republicans. Our so innocent heroine, Tanya, is on a train trip toward headquarters. She's not riding in luxury, she's riding the I'm too smart for my own good express. Tanya has already deduced that a massive operation is in the works. As she ponders her recent actions in Erin, she wonders if she's kept her hands clean by only targeting enemy mages and sparing civilians. Her conscience probably isn't as clear as she hopes. During the journey, she bumps into Maximilian Johann von Uger, now a major. Tanya, being her usual shrewd self, peppers him with questions. Sensing her sharp intellect, he lets slip about the upcoming huge operation. As if that wasn't enough of a revelation, he also mentions that her battalion will be playing the vital role of rearguard in this grand scheme. Meanwhile, back at headquarters, the generals are having a collective meltdown. The Erin uprising has wreaked havoc on the rail infrastructure, making it a logistical nightmare to keep the front lines supplied. Von Zetter, the strategic genius, declares they need a paradigm shift. Instead of forcing the enemy to surrender, they need to deplete their resources aggressively. The cunning plan: withdraw from the Rhine front and bait the enemy into a well-laid trap. Enter Tanya's battalion, which is deployed to create the illusion that the Empire is gearing up for a major advance. In this high-stakes game of deception, they face a highly skilled enemy ground force and formidable enemy mages. One of her companies takes a brutal hit, losing 60% of their troops. Command, thinking enough is enough, tells Tanya she can retreat. But Tanya, fully aware of the broader strategy, insists they must hold out a bit longer to keep the charade alive. Shortly after, she's seemingly hit by an artillery shell, adding drama to the ruse. The Empire continues their strategic retreat, and the Republic, thinking they have the upper hand, plans to advance. That night, 2nd Lieutenant Warren Grants tends to Victoria's wounds. Noticing his unease, Victoria reassures him. She explains that Tanya had been trying to convey that High Command was to blame for the debacle in Erin, not him. Despite everything, Victoria's loyalty to Tanya remains unshaken, showcasing the strong bonds forged in the heat of battle. Erich von Marugen, who often finds himself reluctantly impressed by Tanya, praises her and her troops for their crucial role in the successful operation. Tanya, always the quick thinker, pieces together rumors and guesses that there's some disruptive new technology about to be deployed. Von Rarujan, acknowledging her sharp mind once again, reunites Tanya with her favorite mad scientist, Dr. Shujal. The doctor, brimming with enthusiasm, unveils his latest creation, rockets called V1 that run on hydrogen, capable of striking deep within enemy territory at a top speed of Mach 1.5. His plan: launch mages inside the rockets. Even Von Rarujan can't help but feel a bit of sympathy for Tanya as she digests this latest piece of madness. Tanya, clearly overwhelmed, prepares for the night before the mission. Lieutenant Weiss Matthias Johann confides in Second Lieutenant Grants that it's impossible to relax before a mission of such magnitude. The part about being rocketed into enemy territory isn't exactly calming. As preparations for the operation continue, HQ confirms that booby traps are set at key points and orders the next phase to commence. The strongest of Tanya's mages, along with Tanya herself, are loaded into the V1 rockets. Tanya delivers a stirring speech to her troops, boosting their morale and courage before they embark on this wild ride. With a flick of the switch, Dr. Shujal launches the rockets. As the rockets near their targets, the mages activate mechanisms to parachute safely to the ground. But let's be real, who wouldn't be at least a little queasy about being shot out of a rocket at Mach 1.5? Tanya and her battalion brace themselves for the impact, knowing their survival hinges not just on their training, but on a whole lot of luck and perhaps a dash of divine intervention. One can see the ongoing struggle of Tanya against overwhelming odds and the chaotic machinations of war. Despite the absurdity and danger of her missions, Tanya's relentless determination and strategic genius shine through, earning her grudging respect even from her skeptics. As always, Tanya's ability to navigate the insanity of her world with a combination of wit, ruthlessness, and a touch of dark humor makes her a captivating character to watch. Tanya's complex relationship with the higher-ups, including the ever-skeptical Von Rarujan, highlights her unique position within the military hierarchy. She is both a pawn and a queen, maneuvering through the game with an uncanny ability to turn every situation to her advantage. Her interactions with Dr. Shujal add a layer of dark comedy as she faces the absurdity of his inventions with a mix of dread and resignation. Tanya remains a force to be reckoned with, always staying one step ahead, even when the odds and divine entities are stacked against her. Her sharp mind, unyielding spirit, and ability to inspire her troops ensure that she continues to be a formidable presence on the battlefield. With its mix of strategy, suspense, and a dash of dark humor, perfectly captures the essence of Tanya's character and the high-stakes world she inhabits. Colonel Anson Su is back, and let's just say he's not exactly thrilled. Sporting an eye patch and an aura of divine power, Su is on a mission. The Allied Kingdom has sent a shipload of mages to bolster the Republican army, and Su, the most extreme and dedicated of them all, is on board, enchanting individual bullets with a glow of yellow power. Meanwhile, Tanya reunites with her company after their rocket-powered arrival. Among them is her loyal second-in-command, Victoria Ivanovna Serebriakov. The three squads reform and confirm that their missile warheads struck their targets. With only 10 minutes to gather intelligence from the targets before destroying them, they spring into action. Tanya's squad, unfortunately, finds themselves at an abandoned base and come up empty-handed. However, the other two squads hit the jackpot, destroying the Republican main communications base and their primary munitions store. Mission accomplished, they retreat to a waiting submarine. As Tanya and her squads regroup, Hans von Zetter is enduring a grilling from various government ministers and noblemen. He apologizes for worrying the Emperor with the depth of their strategic retreat. Amidst the increasingly hostile crowd, Tanya's battalion reports in with the success code phrase. Jubilant yet professional, von Zetter briefs the audience on the next phase of the operation. The retreat, much to the civilians' chagrin, was a ruse. The enemy, thinking they had the upper hand, advanced, unaware that the Empire had planted tons of explosives in the tunnels beneath the trenches. When the order to detonate came, one of the Republican flanks was obliterated in an instant. Republican mages, unable to reach the command center that Tanya's company had destroyed, headed back to assess the chaos. The Republican troops were thrown into disarray as Imperial armored and mechanized units surged through the gap in the line. Back on the submarine, Tanya and her battalion receive word that the operation to destroy the enemy's flank was a resounding success. Elation spreads through the ranks as they realize this operation brings the war one step closer to a favorable conclusion for the Empire. They're ordered to deploy and support the ground troops, and as they move out, the Imperial forces inflict significant casualties and damage on the enemy, including their airborne mages. The Empire's troops, using flamethrowers, add to the devastation. Approaching the coast in flying formation, Tanya preps her troops for what she hopes will be the final push before they can return home. She muses about resuming her quest for a quiet, comfortable life once this battle is over. But, as always, fate has other plans. They receive word of an unidentified body of mages approaching. As they ready themselves for engagement, Second Lieutenant Warren Grants is hit from above and plummets from the sky, apparently dead. Tanya looks up to see none other than Colonel Anson Sue hovering above them. Unemotional and with cold precision, Sue declares one enemy down. Sue, seemingly resurrected from the dead and powered by divine intervention, takes aim at Tanya and her troops. The sight of Sue, who Tanya believed to be long gone, sends a chill down her spine. His eye, glowing with divine power, signifies that this encounter is no ordinary skirmish. Sue's presence on the battlefield, combined with his enhanced abilities, spells trouble for Tanya and her battalion. Despite the shock, Tanya quickly regains her composure. She barks orders to her troops, urging them to prepare for the imminent clash. The air is thick with tension as Tanya's battalion braces for the fight of their lives. Sue, fueled by a mix of vengeance and divine energy, unleashes a barrage of enchanted bullets. The sky lights up with magic and gunfire as Tanya's troops engage Sue and his mages. Tanya, always the strategist, tries to outmaneuver Sue. She knows that brute force alone won't be enough to take him down. She needs to exploit any weakness, any momentary lapse in his divine powers. But Sue, with his newfound abilities, is a formidable opponent. His movements are swift, his attacks relentless, and his determination unshakable. As the battle rages on, Tanya's mind races. She recalls their previous encounter and tries to anticipate Sue's tactics. The key to victory lies in outsmarting him, using his own strength against him. With her troops providing cover, Tanya devises a plan. She signals to Victoria and the others, outlining a strategy to lure Sue into a trap. The plan hinges on precise timing and coordination. Tanya and her squad execute a series of feints, drawing Sue's attention and leading him into a narrow corridor where his movements are restricted. As Sue takes the bait, Tanya positions herself for the decisive blow. In a climactic moment, she launches a concentrated magical attack, aiming to exploit the brief window of vulnerability. The battlefield falls silent as the dust settles. Sue, caught off guard by Tanya's cunning maneuver, is struck down. The once mighty colonel, now a fallen adversary, lies defeated. Tanya and her troops, battered but victorious, breathe a sigh of relief. The immediate threat is over, but the war is far from won. As they regroup and tend to their wounded, Tanya reflects on the battle. She knows that each victory brings them closer to ending the war, but the cost is high. The sight of fallen comrades is a stark reminder of the price they pay. Tanya steels herself for the challenges ahead, determined to lead her battalion to ultimate victory. With Sue defeated and the operation a success, Tanya and her troops prepare for the next phase of their mission. They know that the path to peace is fraught with danger, but they march forward with unwavering resolve. The moment ends with Tanya contemplating the future, her mind set on the battles yet to come, and the quiet life she still yearns for, now just a little closer within reach. Things literally get explosive. The petite powerhouse Tanya Degurechaff is once again up against overwhelming odds. Never one to back down from a challenge, Tanya commands her mages to attack despite being vastly outnumbered. She draws the gun she took from the resurrected threat, Colonel Sue, and shoots him as a whole, fueled by a strong determination. Sue isn't done yet, though, because nothing in Tanya's life ever goes as planned. He finishes a self-destruct sequence by wrapping Tanya and himself in a huge explosion. As the Empire's reinforcements draw near, the Allied Kingdom determines that it is best to retreat rather than risk being valiant. When Victoria, Tanya's devoted second-in-command, hears her coughing through the smoke, she is relieved that Tanya has only minor wounds. The majority of her soldiers, including the seemingly unbreakable Grants, also make it out alive. Blown but not defeated, they stagger back to base. Rewind to the chaotic moment. With a fierce assault on Tanya's soldiers, Sue leads his troops of mages with eyes blazing with heavenly power. As calculating as ever, Tanya quickly understands that there is no turning back. She thus takes the sensible course of action and issues an order for a charge. Sue sees the light of divine energy burning in his eye as he prays for the ability to destroy Tanya, also known as the Devil of the Rhine. Despite a brave fight from Tanya's companies, they are forced to sensibly retreat into a cloud bank due to the overwhelming numbers of superiority. Tanya uses her superhuman speed to break through the enemy's line and make eye contact with Sue. Victoria tries to offer cover as she struggles to keep up. But it's a desperate situation. The longer the battle rages, the more of Tanya's troops fall, and she spots First Lieutenant Matthias Johann Weiss flying straight into an ambush. Tanya prays briefly, and her eyes light up yellow, giving her more power. She manages to shove Weiss aside in time, and then she finds herself in a vicious dogfight with Sue face to face. She can easily kick the gun out of his hand and stab him in the chest because they are so close. However, unexpectedly enough, that is still insufficient to eliminate him. Sue grabs Tanya with his enormous physical strength and gets ready to destroy himself once more. Tanya, imprisoned, tries to escape. Tanya is about to meet her fiery demise, but Victoria's perfectly timed shot is what breaks Sue's hold. Sue tries hard, but in vain. After defeating the last of the opposition, the Empire's soldiers start to rejoice over their brave victory. Hans von Zetter and his staff are ecstatic when the Republican troops leave and the Empire's army marches triumphantly through the streets of Paris. The next meeting with politicians and businessmen is in a celebratory mood, a far cry from the tense meetings before. Everyone is preparing for the impending peace now that the war appears to be coming to an end. Tanya witnesses 3 bullies harassing a child while she is traveling to her office. Unfazed and full of defiance, the child swears he will never forgive his abusers. Tanya can really relate to this scene because she has fought bullies on a much bigger scale in her own life. The Republican Navy is pulling out, Victoria says later as she reads a newspaper announcing victory. Ever the strategist, Tanya glances at a map and quickly determines that the Navy is evacuating the army, not just withdrawing. Seeing an opening, she chooses to launch an assault on the port where the evacuation is occurring. However, her plans hit a snag when the theater command refused to cooperate. Anyhow, Tanya tries to use her orders to test the V-1 rockets as a cover for her attack. But the higher-ups at Strategic HQ catch wind of her scheme. In their pursuit of peace, they order her to stand down. Tanya, knowing full well the consequences of letting the enemy regroup, falls into despair. The realization that she's doomed to face years more of war is a bitter pill to swallow. Hearing the stand-down order from HQ, Tanya seethes with frustration and rage. Tanya can't help but feel the weight of her predicament. Her mind races to find a solution, but the divine manipulations of being X and the stubbornness of her superiors constantly knocks down her efforts. As she thinks about the grim future ahead, Tanya's resolve hardens. She may be small, but her determination is immense, and she vows to navigate the treacherous path that lies before her, no matter the cost. Tanya Degurechaff makes a significant highlight to Erich von Rurigen, a lieutenant colonel. She lets him know that winning a fight without focusing on making the most of victory is pointless. Tanya attempts to visit Hans von Zetter, however he is in the middle of celebrating the kingdom's triumph at the beer house. Since von Zetter is inaccessible, Tanya sits down to talk with Rurigen at the headquarters. Rurigen asks Tanya for her legit assessment on their circumstance, and she lets it all out. She starts by explaining that their new battle victory is just a little step and behaving like it's the finish of the conflict is extremely dangerous and unpatriotic. Rurigen is befuddled that he takes a view at things too sensibly. He asks why the Republic would continue battling after losing the capital city. Tanya explains that hate for the enemies and taking revenge are strong inspirations for countries to continue to battle. She says they should calm the flares of hatred down to end the battle and avoid its harmful consequences. Rurigen is stunned into quietness similarly as a messenger shows up with dire news. The Republic has set up another headquarters on the southern continent. General Du Lugo, a Republican general who got away with his army, is still up in the air to take revenge and defeat the kingdom. His eyes are loaded up with hate as he gives an energetic speech to his soldiers. He lets them know they won't stop until they accomplish a victory. Tanya's unit prepares for arrangement toward the southern continent. In the meantime, von Zetter and Kurt von Rudersdorf talk about their choices. They understand that sending troops south could provoke different nations to engage in the conflict. As the enemies accumulate enormous quantities of troops and supplies, the Imperial commanders tries to bring up an arrangement that will guard the kingdom while stretching out its troops' power toward the southern continent. The US chooses to reach out and sends countless mages to help the exiled Republican army. At an American enrolling office, Mary Sue, the daughter of Colonel Anson Sue, joins the battle. She is driven by rage and a passionate desire to take revenge from the kingdom. Mary Sue likewise promises to bring down the kingdom energized by her hate. At their desert camp, Tanya, alongside Victoria Ivanovna Serebryakov and Matthias Johann Weiss, addresses her soldiers. She lets them know that the entire world is currently their enemies. Briefly, it appears as she is nearly shouting to God for help. Then, at that point, she begins to discuss the savage principles of this world and dispatches into an irate talk against being X. The god she accepts is driving them into fight. Tanya announces that she and her warriors will put the arrogant god out of a task. Her soldiers noisily vow their help, showing their preparation to battle. Briefly, it appeared as Tanya planned to surrender, however the second immediately passed. Tanya and her warriors are ready to confront whatever comes straight away. They realize that their battle is not even close to finished, and they are prepared to go up against the difficulties ahead. Tanya's alerts to Rurigen about the risks of uncapitalized wind become more evident. The Republic's new base in the southern continent addresses a huge danger, and the contribution of different countries, similar to the US, entangles the kingdom's situation. Tanya's understanding of the job of hate and vengeance in fighting demonstrates precisely as both General Du Lugo and Mary Sue epitomize these serious feelings, driving their assurance to battle against the kingdom. In the desert camp, Tanya's talk to her soldiers is both persuasive and disobedient. She recognizes the truth that the whole world is currently against them, however, rather than despondent. She channels her dissatisfaction and outrage towards being X. This second features Tanya's point of view and the individual resentment she holds against the heavenly substance she faults for her issue. Her announcement to oust being X resounds with her fighters, who are not set in stone to help her objective. The kingdom's powers are planning for a troublesome mission on the southern continent, and the presence of American mages close to the Republican army shows an intense fight ahead. Tanya's leadership and her warrior's devotion are being tested as they prepare for the difficulties that lie on await. The stakes are higher, and the result of this new period of the conflict stays unsure. Tanya's capacity to predict the more extensive implications of their win and her constant drive to beat obstructions, including the controls of being X, highlight her personality's flexibility and vital brightness. Now, it's the year 1925 of the Unified Year, and Colonel Erich along with Captain Maximilian Johann is having dinner. As soon as he takes a bite of his pasta, which is literally dipped in water, any Italian would have died of ligma at the sight of such monstrosity. He sighs because he's tired of this food. Johann says that even the railway folks are tired of this because the quality is bad. Then, Erich says that the quality of food has a direct effect on morale. He would have asked the cook to at least put some effort into the food, but Johann reminds him that they can't really ask for luxuries. Johann tells him further that the front lines, especially on the southern front, are way more worse. Hearing that, Erich asks if 203rd Aerial Mage Battalion is there too. If so, he can totally make a suggestion to General von Zedor. Johann wonders what he meant by it, and Erich explains that their nominal allies in Uldoa have been making noises. They want a closer relationship, so if they drop hints about wanting to share provisions, they might be willing to provide. Grown men dropping hints gotta be the girliest thing I saw in the entire series by now. Erich is assured that the 203rd will love it. Now, we're here at the southern front where our baby girl who is role-playing Tanya is sitting in a tent, completely parched. Even Victoria is thirsty as heck, and I bet I could help her. Then, Weiss comes in with a great news, but there were supplies that came from back home. There is a ton of dried pasta that got sent their way, and everyone is just happy to see some variety in food. But well, their excitement did not last that long because they still don't have enough water out here in the desert, and if they used up all their water in cooking pasta, they would die of dehydration. After that, Tanya tells them all to get back to work because this pasta is good for nothing. She tells them their mission. They do force recon and strike their supplies like they always do. Further, she tells them that they will hit their supply lines and see how they react to it. Right away, they get to it and they begin to fly to their target to complete the mission. Tanya gets informed that they have sighted an enemy supply depot that looks like their target. Hearing that, Tanya tells them that the second company will hit from above, third and fourth companies will strike from the flanks. She warns them to not fly into their allies' firing lines. With that said, she orders all units to attack. On the other hand, one of the soldiers of the enemies looks closely at the sun because he sees something coming towards them, and it surely isn't some flock of pigeons. Soon enough, he realizes that it's an enemy attack and Tanya's entire team begins to blow up the whole place. Then, the fourth company tells them that they have spotted an ammo storage facility, and she should be able to see it directly ahead of the third company. So, Tanya asks the third company if they can hit it easily. The third company locks in the target and blows up the ammo facility completely, causing a huge explosion. Seeing how miserably they are losing like the way Barcelona keeps on losing, the enemy retreats and runs away to the bunkers to hide for their lives. So, now, the place is good to explore. Victoria sees that there is a lot of water stored in the enemy's supplies, and well, that brings a joy on their faces. Later at night, the dried pasta can now be cooked and they can finally have something other than bread. The soldiers are happy to have a treat to themselves of some pasta, which is literally flavorless since all they have is some water and pasta to eat. But after a few bites, they do realize that the pasta needs some spices, but of course they have no option other than to just go with it and fill their rumbling tummies. After they are done eating, Weiss proposes a plan that their next target should be an allied kingdom forward base. Further, he tells them that what they have suggests that they have been moving large amounts of supplies at night, so they should see what they are stocking up on. Another soldier suggests that they strike the escargots and not the limeys. Another one of them says that he is not a gourmand by any means, but there are things even he can't eat. Then, Victoria speaks up and points her finger at the map and asks if they should try this supply dump. Because of its location, it should have some yummy ingredients. She realizes that she messed up big time by saying that, and everyone is freaked out. But Tanya comes up with a good plan in her mind and decides to go with Victoria's plan. Victoria's eyes definitely light up. Then, Tanya tells them that the goal of the operation is still force recon, but since they are exercising some local command discretion, they need to contact the Southern Front Commander General Rommel. After that, they all are dismissed. Tanya sits down on her chair and thinks that she has to make sure to cover up herself, bureaucracy-wise. The next morning, everyone is gathered up and Tanya gives them sort of a speech over food, the way everything is being shown, the pasta, the bread and whatever else. The next mission they have now is Operation Desert Pasta, and any Italian person would be happy to hear it since Italians are always complaining about pizza or pasta. The mission is then started, and well, as long as they keep finding food, they keep attacking. The enemies do realize what this plan is going on about, but they believe that this is some cunning disguised strategy. Well, that is because every base that was attacked was right on the border of another country's operational jurisdiction. The enemies get to know the name of the mission and they think they are mocking them. On the other hand, Tanya and the crew celebrate with some good pasta and wine, whatever food they could find. While they eat, Tanya thinks about how it is just a temporary coincidence that they were able to find and eat so well in the desert, but that coincidence has restored life and humanity to the troops of this unit. Then, Victoria comes and sits beside Tanya, and she talks about how everything worked out so well. Meanwhile, back at the Imperial capital, Erich is proud of such results and just how the delivery of pasta changed everything for them. That concludes the anime recap. As always, if you enjoyed, let me know down below, and I'm out.